When Mark handed me the pink envelope, a jolt went through me. So sharp and strange it felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I was standing in a familiar classroom, surrounded by faces from my past, with a person I knew all too well standing right in front of me. The whole scene was a nightmare I had already lived through, and I realized with a sickening lurch that I had been reborn. My first life ended on a brutally cold winter's day. I remember being surrounded by a circle of laughing faces as they kicked and stomped on my body, which lay broken in the snow. My white shirt was soaked through with blood, and the pristine snow around me was stained a gruesome crimson. Just when I thought the pain couldn't get any worse, someone sloshed a bucket of salt water over me. It seeped into my open wounds, and a searing, electric agony consumed every nerve, a pain so intense it nearly suffocated me. As I lay there, moaning softly with blood trickling from my lips, she appeared. It was Chloe, the girl I had quietly admired for years. She walked towards me, her posture high and mighty, her eyes burning with a hatred so fierce it was as if I was the most despicable creature she had ever seen. "Alex, you disgusting man," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You tore me and Mark apart for your own selfish reasons. If it weren't for you, we would be together right now." She leaned in closer, her face contorted in a sneer. "You liked me, didn't you? How does it feel to be killed by the person you love? Don't think for a second I'll forgive you just because you're dying. Never!" She spat out the words and then turned, walking away without a single backward glance. Watching her leave, my heart twisted. I couldn't believe she would push me into such an abyss, all for a man like Mark. And I couldn't understand how she had become convinced that I was the one who had intentionally kept them apart. Chloe and I were childhood friends. We grew up side by side, competing in our studies and encouraging each other to be better. Over the years, my feelings for her deepened into something more than friendship. In high school, she was the star of our class. Brilliant, beautiful, and surrounded by a crowd of admirers. I was always a top student myself, but I was perpetually in her shadow, always the runner-up. Then Mark transferred to our school. He was handsome, charming, and had a reputation as the school bully. He and Chloe, the top student, seemed like characters from two different worlds, but their story felt destined. One day, Mark asked me to pass a love letter to Chloe. Even though my own feelings for her were strong, I never intended to stand in her way. But then I overheard Mark bragging to his friends. He said he just wanted to mess around with Chloe, that he got a thrill out of the idea of corrupting a good girl. On top of that, Chloe was set to go abroad for university soon. Wanting to protect her, I made the decision to keep his letter from her. I never could have foreseen that this single act would cause them to miss each other for 5 years. By the time Chloe returned from her studies overseas, Mark was already married. Chloe directed all her anger and disappointment at me. Using the power and influence she had gained abroad, she orchestrated my public humiliation and had me beaten, watching coldly as I bled out in the snow. My parents, who had watched Chloe grow up and loved her like their own, had invited her over for New Year's, only for her to arrange a fatal accident that took their lives. With the memory of that horror fresh in my mind, I stood there in the classroom, the pink envelope in my hand. This time I decided I would let them have their love story. I solemnly took Mark's letter, but just to be sure, I went to a copy shop and made 100 identical copies. I carefully stuffed every single one of them into Chloe's desk. This time there would be no missed connections. Let's see if their great love was truly meant to be. With that task completed, I dedicated myself entirely to preparing for my exams. In my past life, my feelings for Chloe were a complicated mix of love, admiration, and a fierce sense of competition. That affection ultimately became the proof she used to condemn me for being jealous, sealing my doom. Now, I had moved past those fruitless emotions and was focused on myself. I refused to let my choices be dictated by feelings, or to love someone from a position of inferiority. I had learned the hard way that only by becoming strong could I control my own destiny. Soon enough, whispers filled the school hallways about Chloe and Mark's romantic confession on the rooftop. They were finally a couple. I saw Chloe snuggled up against Mark, looking coy and gentle, a world away from the focused, studious girl I once knew. In that moment, I saw my old self, the boy who had humbly offered her his sincere heart, who would have searched half the city for a specific ice cream just because she mentioned wanting one, who hid his favorite shirt at the bottom of his closet because she offhandedly said it was ugly. All those foolish, selfless acts vanished with my rebirth. I gave them a passing glance and returned my focus to my textbooks. In the days that followed, I heard countless stories. Chloe was cutting classes to be with Mark, planning elaborate birthday surprises for him, and getting into fights with other girls who showed him attention. She even got a tattoo and started going to clubs with him. Her once cool and reserved demeanor was replaced by an unrestrained, giddy excitement. Swept up in this wave of youthful rebellion, she seemed to forget her once powerful ambitions. Despite her natural talent, her academics began to falter. Her grades slipped from the top of the class to somewhere below the top 50. Mark, knowing I used to like Chloe, would sometimes taunt me, asking her in my presence, "Did you ever have feelings for your old childhood friend?" Chloe would just scoff and smirk. "Alex? He's so boring and rigid. Who would ever like him?" Mark would laugh at her response, pulling her into a dramatic kiss right in front of everyone. Our classmates would gasp, their faces turning bright red before they scurried away. I simply ignored the two clowns and kept my head down, working on my practice exams. Before long, my relentless hard work began to pay off. In a major mock exam, I shattered my old ranking and placed first in the entire school. Then, something unexpected happened. My teacher called me into his office and told me the school wanted to offer me a nomination for a prestigious study abroad program. All I had to do was keep up my hard work and not let them down. In my past life, this opportunity had belonged to Chloe, but through a twist of fate and my own effort, it had fallen into my hands. Even with this chance to bypass the intense college entrance exam, I didn't ease up. Instead, I worked even harder, soaking up knowledge like a sponge and constantly pushing myself to learn more. Meanwhile, Chloe started to fade from the periphery of my life, until one day, as I was delivering some materials to the teacher's office, I heard her name again. A heated argument was coming from inside, punctuated by heavy sighs of frustration. "Chloe, what on earth is going on with you?" the teacher pleaded. "Your grades have plummeted because of this relationship. At this rate, forget about a top university. You might not even get into a regular college." Chloe's parents were there too, their voices laced with worry. "Yes, Chloe, you're still so young. You should be focusing on your studies," her mother said. "You're at a major crossroads in your life right now," the teacher added earnestly. "If you make the wrong step, everything could go downhill. We've been where you are, and we are not trying to harm you. If you want to date, you can do it after you start college." Chloe lifted her head, her expression defiant. "You always say it's for my own good, but you just want to control me. You want me to fit into your expectations, to be a reflection of your own vanity. It's Mark who showed me what really matters in life. I'm happy now, and I want to pursue my own life. Is that so wrong?" "It's clear you don't understand," her father said, looking at her with pain in his eyes. "Chloe, how can you say this about us? We've poured so much into you, not for any credit, but just so your path in life would be easier." Chloe scoffed. "Don't pretend you're doing this for me. I know you're just worried about losing face. Mark isn't the bad student you make him out to be. He has dreams, and he's good to me. I'm willing to give up everything for him." With that, she stormed out of the office. She paused for a fraction of a second when she saw me standing there, then quickly looked away and brushed past me without a word. I stood at the door, having witnessed the entire drama, feeling a complex mix of emotions. So this is what Chloe had been thinking all these years. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her parents. They had devoted their love and resources to her, only to have their genuine care twisted and labeled as a desire for control. I sighed and walked into the office to hand the materials to the teacher. "I'm here to deliver these," I said. The teacher took them wearily. "Thanks, Alex. Just leave them there." I set them down and turned to leave. "Wait, Alex," the teacher called out. I stopped, puzzled. After a moment's hesitation, he said, "What you just saw. Pretend you didn't." "Okay," I nodded. "I understand." Leaving the office, I took a deep breath. Chloe's path and mine had now completely diverged. She was walking her wide, sunny road, and I was crossing my narrow bridge. We were destined to become strangers. I buried myself in my studies, ignoring everything else. Finally, the day of my departure arrived. My family and friends sent me off with a warm farewell at the airport. Even Chloe's parents came. Their smiles were a bit forced, their eyes filled with a weary sadness. "Alex, congratulations," her father said. "Keep in touch after you go abroad. Oh, if only Chloe could have been more like you." Their words were cut off by the blare of the boarding call. I politely bid them farewell and hurried onto the plane. Though I felt a flicker of pity for the effort her parents had wasted, it was no longer my concern. As I settled into my seat and the plane took off, I knew my life was about to change drastically. Once I was abroad, I worked with a single-minded focus, often barely stopping to eat or sleep. All that dedication paid off when I eventually earned dual degrees from a top university. I kept in touch with my classmates from back home, and they shared stories of their new lives. Once in a while, I would hear news about Chloe. Because of her relationship, she had messed up her college entrance exam and ended up at an average university. Her parents were heartbroken and tried everything they could to break her and Mark up. But their efforts only fueled Chloe's rebellious spirit. A high school friend told us she had run away from home to live with Mark. Someone else mentioned seeing her at a maternity clinic once. She looked worn out and had lost a lot of weight. I didn't have much of a reaction to the news. Chloe was the type to let love consume her entire world, and as long as she was with Mark, it was predictable that she would neglect her own future. The next time I saw Chloe in person was at a high school reunion several years later. Everyone had changed so much. They talked excitedly about their university experiences and their budding careers. "Alex, I saw the paper you published. It's amazing. Your advisor is a huge name in the field, right? I saw you in the news and told my roommates you were my high school buddy. They were so jealous. It's not every day you get to know a genius." I sat at the table, responding calmly to the flurry of questions as the atmosphere buzzed with energy. At some point, someone cautiously asked, "Chloe, are you still with Mark?" The lively chatter immediately died down. All eyes subtly shifted to the person sitting quietly in the corner. Chloe had lost all of her former luster. Despite her carefully applied makeup, a deep fatigue seemed to seep from her very bones. Her eyes held a weariness that made her seem much older than she was. Chloe managed a faint smile, her tone flat. "We're not together anymore." A collective sigh of mixed feelings, pity, relief, a touch of schadenfreude rippled through the room. Chloe and Mark, the couple that had once been the center of so much drama and attention, had reached their inevitable end. Back then, they were the ultimate intriguing pair. The cool, high-achieving girl and the handsome, rebellious boy. They had dated boldly, always in the spotlight. But as time went on, and they were freed from the artificial hierarchy of high school, the contrast that had once drawn them together began to fade. After Chloe performed poorly on her exams, she and Mark ended up in the same city for college. She had been determined to work hard and get back on top, to prove herself again. She poured all her energy into her studies, and in the process neglected her boyfriend. Mark, while not as wild as he had been in high school, couldn't shake his flirtatious nature. His good looks and outgoing personality quickly attracted new admirers. One of them was a particularly persistent, wealthy woman who was both attractive and very generous with her money. Mark, enjoying the easy lifestyle she provided, grew impatient with Chloe, who was rapidly losing her it girl status. He left her to be with the wealthy woman. Chloe was devastated and spent a long time in a deep depression before eventually refocusing on her studies. However, her desperate desire for a quick comeback didn't materialize. She graduated with mediocre results and found an ordinary job. Mark, just as he had in my past life, ended up marrying a woman with a good family background, and rumor had it, they were quite happy. After a few more moments of whispered gossip, everyone moved on to other topics. In my past life, Chloe had gone abroad, polished her resume, and returned to work at a top investment bank, becoming quite wealthy. People had naturally flocked to her. But now, she was just an ordinary employee, and no one cared to waste more than a few words on her. Watching this unfold, I felt a complex wave of emotions. In my past life, the things Chloe did to me because of Mark were still seared into my memory. I never thought that one small decision of mine, to give her the letter, would so completely alter the trajectory of her life. But then again, so what? I now had my own life and my own future. I no longer lived under her shadow, nor did I have to fear her wrath. I was strong enough now, and Chloe had become just a minor character in the long story of my life. I assumed that after the reunion I would have nothing more to do with Chloe. Our families were still neighbors, but Chloe had never returned home after running away all those years ago. Her parents had been heartbroken, crying every day for a time, and had since become much more withdrawn. Then, one day, I was at home reading some foreign academic papers when my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. When I answered, a slurred, drunken voice came through the line. "Alex, it's Chloe. Can you come get me? My head hurts so much." "Sorry, I'm busy," I said coolly. "I'll call your parents for you." "No." Her voice suddenly became sharp. "They don't want me. I'm begging you, Alex, for old time's sake." I frowned, not wanting to get involved. But after a moment, I decided I should go. It was time to clear things up, once and for all, and avoid any future trouble. It turned out that Chloe's company had just gone through a major round of layoffs, and she was on the list. When I found her at the bar, she had lost every shred of her former pride. Her makeup was smeared, and she reeked of cheap alcohol. Her eyes reddened when she saw me. She raised her glass in a mock toast, a bitter smile on her face. "Alex, if I hadn't dated Mark back then, would everything be different?" Her eyes were filled with regret and a profound helplessness, like a lost child. But I felt no urge to comfort her. I just looked at her coldly. Seeing that I wasn't responding, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I regret it so much. If I hadn't been so blinded by love, things would be so different. I never knew I would end up like this. Why didn't my teachers and parents try harder to stop me? Maybe I wouldn't be in this mess now." Her gaze shifted to me, a flicker of envy in her tear-filled eyes. "Sometimes I really, really envy you," she said, her voice breaking as she began to cry harder. "You have everything, and I have nothing." Despite her tears, I felt no sympathy. I had already started to leave, but I stopped, turned back, and said with a cold laugh, "Yes, you're miserable, but you deserve it." Chloe froze, her tears stopping midstream. She clearly hadn't expected those words. What did you say?" I looked at her, my expression unwavering. "I said you deserve it, Chloe. Even now you're blaming everyone else. Do you remember how much everyone tried to warn you? You ignored them all, and now you have the nerve to blame them for not caring enough? You are selfish. You're not regretting a lost love. You're regretting the loss of your career and your prestige. That's why you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself." You can't say that to me." Chloe trembled with anger. "You did it on purpose, didn't you? If you hadn't taken that letter Mark wrote to me, none of this would have happened." Watching her, I felt a deep, profound disgust. "Chloe, stop lying to yourself. Even if I had taken the letter, you would have just blamed me for breaking you and Mark up, for making you miss out on the great love of your life." I looked down at her with disdain. "You and Mark are a perfect match." Saying this, I turned and left for good, wanting nothing more to do with someone who so desperately wanted to have it all, without taking any of the blame. As the year drew to a close, I remembered how, in my past life, I was enduring unbearable pain around this time. But now, my parents were alive and well, my career was flourishing, and I had a kind and beautiful girlfriend. Life was complete. Her name was Sarah. She was the daughter of my dad's colleague. Vibrant, cute, and refreshingly straightforward. Before Sarah, my life had been a monotonous cycle of studying and working. She brought color and joy into my world. We went skiing and skydiving. We traveled to new countries. We walked hand in hand through city streets, feeling the envious glances of passers-by and holding on to each other a little tighter. A year after we met, our families got together, and we set a wedding date. At our engagement party, Sarah and I stood hand in hand, surrounded by the warm blessings of our families. My parents were smiling, their eyes filled with pride. Suddenly, the door burst open, and an uninvited guest stormed in. It was Chloe. She was dressed in flashy clothes, a stark contrast to her usual style, but it looked forced and tacky. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I don't believe I invited you." No sooner had the words left her mouth than Chloe lashed out. "You bitch! You stole my man and you have the nerve to talk to me?" My parents looked incredibly awkward, and Sarah's parents were clearly shocked. Sarah stood up, her composure unshaken. "Please stop causing a scene here. Alex and I have been together for over a year. We're very happy, so please stop trying to mess things up." "You called me what?" Chloe got even angrier. "Who said you could call Alex so familiarly?" Knowing me well, Sarah's parents trusted me completely. They calmly comforted my parents and suggested that they let us handle the situation. Then they quietly guided them out of the room, leaving just me, Sarah, and the furious Chloe. But Chloe wasn't leaving. Instead, she turned to me, her expression shifting dramatically. "Alex," she said, her voice suddenly soft, "I've remembered everything. In my past life, I messed up. I hurt you. But I know now that I was wrong. Can't we start over? I realize now that you were always the one who was there for me. I ignored you before, but there's still time, Alex. We belong together." Sarah tugged on my hand, frowning. "Please leave. Today is our engagement party. Whatever happened before is in the past, so please don't disturb us." Seeing this, Chloe glared at Sarah and shouted, "Shut up, you bitch! If it wasn't for you meddling, Alex would have never left me." As she said that, she actually raised her hand to strike Sarah. I couldn't contain my anger any longer. I stepped forward and slapped Chloe hard across the face. "Chloe, that's enough!" She clutched her cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief. You hit me?" I stared at her coldly. "What, should I have let you hit my fiancé?" Chloe's face crumpled, and she looked utterly pitiful. I couldn't understand how, Even if she did remember her past life, she could have the audacity to come find me. "Chloe, did you really remember?" I asked. She froze at my words, but then a flicker of hope appeared in her eyes, thinking perhaps I might forgive her. "Yes, Alex, I remembered. I'm so sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you took the love letter on purpose, so I—" She mumbled the rest, quickly changing the subject. "But we're both here now, right? Nothing has happened yet. This time I won't ignore your feelings, Alex. Can't we please start again?" Her shamelessness made my blood boil. "Chloe, stop making things up!" I shouted. "What you did to me, and what you did to my parents. You think you can just brush it all off like that? You only care about yourself. You ignored my life. You ignored my parents' lives. You're heartless. In our past life, yes, it was wrong of me to hide Mark's letter. But what did my parents ever do to you? They treated you like their own daughter. They held you when you cried and celebrated your birthdays. And what did you do? You had them killed all because of Mark." As I spoke, my emotions surged, and I grabbed a teacup from the table and threw it at her. It struck her on the forehead, drawing a trickle of blood. She was terrified by my rage and froze on the spot. Sarah rushed to my side, trying to calm me down. "Alex, don't hurt yourself over someone like her. It's not worth it." Holding Sarah's hand tightly, I looked at Chloe with pure ice in my eyes and said, "You are where you are now because of your own actions. Don't ever bother us again. If you do, I'll hit you every single time I see you." Chloe went pale, looking like she was about to argue, but I didn't want to hear another word. I called security and had her thrown out. After that day, Sarah and I found another venue for our engagement party. Both our families were understanding and never mentioned the incident again. Once we were officially engaged, my life felt sweeter than ever. We would binge-watch shows together, and I would tease her asking, "Don't you have anything you want to ask me?" Sarah would play dumb. "What do you mean?" I chuckled. "Don't you think what Chloe and I talked about was weird?" Shaking her head with a gentle smile, Sarah said, "Alex, all I know is that she put you through a lot of pain. I don't ever want to bring that up again and hurt you." My heart warmed, and I hugged her tightly. Meeting her was truly the best fortune of my life. Not long after the engagement, Sarah and I got our marriage license. Our wedding was a grand celebration, filled with friends and family, everyone except for Chloe and her parents. It was the happiest moment of my life, and I still smiled just thinking about it. After the wedding, Sarah and I took a month-long honeymoon. We traveled to places I had only dreamed of visiting. We took countless pictures, sending them back to our families to share in our happiness. The month flew by, and we returned home with bags full of souvenirs. My parents welcomed me with wide smiles, but there was a hint of worry in their eyes. They told me that Chloe had been jailed for attempted murder. After the scene she caused at our party, she had a complete mental breakdown. She stopped working and locked herself in her room, living in a fantasy world where she couldn't distinguish reality from her memories of her past life. She started bossing everyone around, even strangers, believing she was still the powerful, successful woman she had been before. Her parents were beside themselves with worry, but no matter how much they pleaded, Chloe wouldn't listen. Eventually, they felt they had no choice but to try to have her admitted to a mental hospital. When the staff arrived, Chloe completely freaked out. She injured one of the workers and managed to run away. Filled with a twisted rage, she headed straight for the restaurant that Mark and his wife now owned. In this life, just as in the last, Mark had married his original wife. Together, they had opened a successful restaurant that had grown into a small chain. Life was good for them. Chloe stormed into the restaurant wielding a knife and stabbed Mark. His wife, who was standing right there, screamed and fainted. Mark collapsed to the ground, clutching his bleeding stomach and shouting for help. Chloe, completely out of her mind, sat on top of him, stabbing him repeatedly. "I was supposed to have a bright future as a director," she screamed. "You ruined it. Why didn't you just die sooner? It's all your fault. You destroyed my life. I'm going to kill you." The knife rose and fell until Mark stopped breathing. But even then, Chloe didn't stop. Blood splattered everywhere. The other patrons were too terrified to approach her. When the police finally arrived, she was still hacking at Mark's body, muttering to herself. Her parents showed up, desperately calling her name. Chloe glanced at them, and then suddenly grinned. "Dad? Mom? What are you doing here?" Her mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "Chloe, my Chloe, how did you end up like this?" Chloe tilted her head, thought for a moment, and then spat. "It's all Mark's fault, that jerk. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be like this. But it's okay, he's dead now. And Alex, he should have hidden that love letter." As she said this, she waved the bloody knife around at the crowd. "It's their fault! They all made me this way! They all need to die!" The police eventually subdued her and took her away. I heard the whole story from my parents, but I felt nothing. They asked if I wanted to see Chloe's parents, but I just shook my head. I had no sympathy to spare for the parents of the person who had tried to kill me. 5 years later, I was holding Sarah's hand, watching our lively daughter, Lily, run ahead of us. "Come on, Mom and Dad, hurry up," she called, her face flushed with excitement. Seeing her so cute and full of life, Sarah and I exchanged a smile and a shrug. Lily was thoroughly spoiled by her grandparents, so we had a rule. She could only have sweets once a week. This made her much more cooperative at mealtimes. Today was her special dessert day, and she was over the moon. We walked into her favorite bakery. "Hi, can I get 3 strawberry cakes, please?" I said to the clerk. "Hello, 1 chocolate cake, please," another voice said at the same time. I looked up from my phone, surprised. It was Chloe's parents. They saw us at the same moment, and we exchanged an awkward glance before they approached us. "Alex, long time no see," her father said. "Hello?" I nodded slightly. "It's been a while." After a moment of stilted small talk, I took my packaged cakes and was about to rejoin my wife and daughter. But Chloe's parents stopped me, looking like they wanted to say something more. Sarah came over and took my hand, looking at them questioningly. "There's something we wanted to tell you, Alex," Chloe's mother began, her voice heavy. "Not long after Chloe went to jail, she sharpened a stone she had hidden, and she cut her own throat. By the time the guards found her, it was too late." She paused, her expression pained. When they moved her body, they found that she had written, "I'm sorry," on the floor in her own blood. They had clearly never moved past the death of their daughter. Hearing this news hit me with unexpected force. I frowned and said, "What are you trying to say?" Seeing my reaction, they quickly added, "Oh, we don't mean anything by it. It's just, today is the anniversary of her death. It's also her birthday. We were hoping maybe you might visit her grave?" I pressed my lips together and said nothing. When I didn't respond, they didn't push. They just sighed. "Forget it, forget it. We have no right to ask you in the first place. We won't bring it up again. Sorry, Alex, for bothering your family." I shook my head and paid for their cake as well as my own. Then I turned to them and said, "I'm sorry for your loss." With that, I left with my wife and daughter. As we walked out of the shop, the 3 of us strolled hand in hand down the street, which was bathed in the warm light of the setting sun. The golden glow enveloped us. I closed my eyes for a moment and thought to myself that justice will always be served, and bad deeds will eventually meet their end. It was both a reflection and a reminder. Any resentment I once held had vanished with Chloe's passing. Now I just wanted to cherish the life I had built. I wished I could freeze time, just to hold on to this perfect, peaceful happiness forever.